first step, we're gonna move the seat all the way back, and then also all the way down. That'll give us the most access to get to the front bolts to remove those. Once we got access to the front bolts that lock the seat down to the swivel, we're going to use our T40 Torx bit and loosen and remove the front bolts. We're going to remove the bolt holding the seatbelt receptacle to the seat with our T45 Torx. And then we're going to move the seat forward enough to get access to the rear bolts that hold the seat down to the swivel. Right about there. And then now that all the seat bolts have been loosened or removed, we need to access the ground cable for the vehicle underneath the dashboard on the driver's side and remove the access panel so you can
compress the red switch on the top and remove the main power coupling. Power coupling has been disconnected.
Right, so now that we have the ground cable disconnected and we've waited a little while for everything to de-energize, we need to disconnect the vehicle harness from the seat, and that's done by pushing this little detent in front of the gray lever. So we'll push that down and then we'll move the gray lever out of the way and it'll eject each connector out of its housing in the seat. So detent, gray lever, and ejects. Detent, gray lever, ejects. And then this yellow connector here, this one, you pull these little tabs towards the inside like this, and then it'll pull out like that. Now the seat is ready to remove the last two bolts in the back, and we'll take the seat out of the van.
And remove the seat.
So a quick overview of what we need from the old seat to move onto the new seat so that everything works properly is we need this yellow connector along with the occupancy sensor, which is clipped into the bottom of the seat, and the wire that goes from the occupancy sensor to the yellow connector can stay attached. The second thing that we need is the seatbelt receptacle along with the wire that goes to the back of the large yellow connector. And to get those things out of there, we're going to clip all the zip ties that hold those wires into this seat. And a quick primer on how to remove this yellow connector from this piece of plastic. It's a little bit tricky. And so the best way that I've found is to use some needle nose and push these two tabs in, but that still is not enough to release it. So you need to come behind this little lip and just pop it out of there, right? Just like that. And now this can be removed. And from there, we're gonna remove those three things. So once we have this yellow connector removed from the plastic plinth and we've removed enough zip ties that we can get to this point, we can see that this is going to the seatbelt receptacle sensor. This white pair of wires is going to the occupancy sensor. We're going to need that, and we're going to need this, but these wires can completely be cut from the old seat long enough so that if you ever want to retrofit this part back onto the old seat, they can be reconnected. I'm just going to go right about there and clip the whole bunch of wires off the seat. There we go. To hook up the heat, we need to remove the swivel. To do that, we're going to remove all four E12 headed bolts. So it looks like that, E12. This is the basic wiring harness that comes with the seat. And so one end terminates with connectors that connect directly to each seat heater on the seat. And that comes into the main harness, which has an integrated relay for switching between low and high. And then this goes to the supplied switch. And then this end is the one that we've already removed and connected to the van. It goes to ground and 30 amp or 15 amp hot. So when we put this harness on the bottom of the seat, we don't need this much length because we're in this application. It's not a very long travel to go to the switch. So we're going to remove this whole extension piece. That's it. So to hook up the seat heaters, we need to tie into the EK1 unit that is built into the van specifically for the purpose of powering accessories. And the center post is live all the time, a 20 amp circuit that's live all the time. And the front circuit is a 10 amp circuit that is only live when the ignition is on. And so we need both of these in order to run the seats. If we just hooked up to the 30 amp or the 20 amp center circuit that's always hot, and we left the seat heaters on, the battery would be drained and you'd be unhappy. So in order to achieve that, we use a relay, a general switching relay, which is right here. And this uses the signal wire from the ignition to flip the relay so that when you turn the seats on, you're really using the solid 20 amp circuit. So the output of this circuit is going to our seat heaters. And in order to hook up the seat heaters, we had to run a wire for the driver's seat, and then through the tunnel we ran another wire over to the passenger seat. And on the end of both wires we added a simple bullet connector disconnect so that when we take the seats in and out in the future, we'll be able to disconnect the wiring harness from the seats and take the seats out of the van. So this is the correct orientation. We've got the double thick flange going towards the seat with the bolt going through it. The double prongs go towards the front of the seat. The single prong goes to the back of the seat. And we've started the front bolt, and this happens to be the door side of the seat where there's no seatbelt anchor. So we've got the seatbelt spacer sandwiched between the sliding rail and the seat, and the front bolt is started but not all the way tight, but not loose enough that it's going to get caught when we move the slider. And what makes this easy is if we swing this to the side, then I can squeeze right here. So right where the spring attaches to this little movable release mechanism, and the way that I do it is I squeeze right there, and then we can move the slider to the other end, swing it back, line up the holes, and put the rear two bolts in. All right, the release mechanism handle is not flat. So in order to determine where the curvature is, lay it on a flat surface, and we're gonna look for the rocker. So flip it over, and note that there is a bend. So if this is flat to the table, the handle is going away from the table, and we want to have that angle go away from the bottom of the seat so that we have more travel. So pick it up, and it's going to go in this orientation so that when we release the handle, this has more travel. To install the slider release handle, you can choose between two different settings. So there's two hole positions, and this owner has taller legs, so the vario cushion is going to end up longer. And so we're going to move the handle to the position where it's the farthest forward so that he can release it easily. And so line up the rearmost hole with the rear single peg like that, and then come over to the other side, and then we'll just bring it into position so that lines up there. And then once everything is lined up, you can just pop it into place like that. So it'll click into a friction position. Done. So then we're going to bolt our seatbelt receptacle to the seatbelt anchor using the supplied hardware. You're going to need the 15mm end wrench and your 6mm Allen wrench to bolt that together. This is the occupancy sensor that you took out of the old seat, and we need to have that installed on the bottom of this seat so that it achieves the same functionality that it did on the original seat. And so it needs to be up against the flexible trampoline bottom of our seat and in a neutral position so that when someone's not sitting on it, the switch is not activated, but when someone does sit on it, the switch is activated. And so the easy way to achieve that is to make some small incisions in the trampoline, and one on each side of the occupancy sensor, and then just put the zip tie right around it and zip tie it in 2 places. So one there, and I would put another one there, and then tighten it up so that it's not preloaded, but it is ready to work. So the round switch will fit nicely into the hole in the side of the riser bracket, and as this is going to be a driver seat, I have it on the right knee, so it's inboard on the right knee. And then as we have this harness, we need to locate on the bottom of the seat so it's nice and tidy, and we need to think about the fact that the seat is going to slide independently of that switch, and so we need to leave some nice length so that this can have plenty of free travel. And then in addition to that, the seat cushion on this Vario seat will move independently of the side of the seat. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to end up putting it right about here so it's nice and tidy. But I'm going to strip back this housing wire on this pair of wires here, so that as the center cushion moves independently of the side, these 2 wires can find their home and not get bound up. But the most important thing to think about is that nothing's going to get crushed or ripped or pulled. And once we have that, we're ready to, this is theoretically ready to install. So we're going to install an armrest onto the seat. And to do that, the first thing that we need to do is understand how that works. The locating bolts that are going to hold this armrest onto the seat are actually already in each seat, and they're the bolts that hold the backrest to the reclining mechanism, and they're very easy to identify. If you roll your finger over the fabric, whatever it is, you'll feel a really distinct round bolt head right there, and then if you come straight down, you'll feel another round bolt head right there. And so we're going to open up this fabric and remove these original bolts and then install the armrest. And when you open up the armrest, there will be new bolts inside the cavity. So when we make those razor blade marks, it's possible to put a crosshatch on the top of the bolt, and you're going to see that in the finished seat. And so new bolts are supplied. And if you have 4 bolts that are included in your armrest, it is because the long bolts are only used with seats that have integrated seat belts, and the short bolts are used in every other seat. So if you have 4 bolts, these will be the ones that you use if you have an integrated seat belt, and these will be the ones that you use if you have a normal seat without an integrated seat belt. This is exactly the bolt that's behind this fabric, and if you're having any doubts at all about where you need to cut, you can feel the bolts, but then just as a second guide, you can hold the armrest up and put it where it's going to go, and you can feel that each bolt is right behind where the armrest is going to be finally installed. So the way that I do this, and you could do it however you prefer, is I make a cross hatch, an X right on top of the old bolt. So one nice clean cut one way, one nice clean cut the other way. And then I take a pair of really sharp little nippers, and I bring it in and I cut the tips of the X off so that I can have access with a nice high quality 6mm Allen wrench. So 1, 2, there's 3, and then that's my final cut. So now you can see, once you've cut your access hole so you can clearly get your wrench in, use the included 6mm Allen wrench and remove 1 bolt. So the way I do it is I just start with the top and remove that top bolt. But the key is that whatever Allen wrench you use, make sure that it fits snugly inside the female part of the bolt so you don't strip anything. And then you can start installing the new armrest with the new bolts and discard the old bolts. So just get it going just enough that you can feel the threads are nice and cleanly engaged, and then you can spin the armrest out of the way and then remove the old bottom bolt. So you only want to remove 1 bolt at a time, and that'll make sure that everything inside the seat stays lined up. So once you remove the old bolt, the bottom, you can put the new one in. So we removed the bottom bolt, and I'm about to insert and start the brand new new bolt. And one key here is that as you're threading in the new bolt, it should thread in cleanly and smoothly. And if for some reason it doesn't, it means that something inside the seat has possibly shifted as you're taking it apart. And do not force it. Just remove the bolt, look inside, and line things up visually, and then retry the bolt. And when you have it lined up, it should thread in very smoothly. That's all. Just a little wrap up of what we did is that we have this is the passenger seat, and so it has the seat heater switch installed in the hole at the front left knee of the passenger, and that is going to the harness for the seat heater, which is all self-contained, not modified at all, and is just zip tied up kind of nice and tidy over here on the left and up on the bottom of the seat so that no one can see it when they're looking under the seat. And it culminates with some bullet connectors so that we can take the seat in and out of the van in the future and hook up the seat heater very easily. So that's its own self-contained wiring harness. And then the van wiring harness this is what we took from the original seat, and on the back of it there's the pair of white wires that are still connected, and they go to this occupancy sensor, which has been installed underneath the seat in a neutral position so that it's not being activated right now, but if someone sits on it, it will be. The seatbelt receptacle has been installed, and the wire is neatly routed behind here so that it can't get cut or torn or pulled, and it is connected through this small yellow connector into the back of the large yellow connector exactly the way it was originally. And the abandoned wires are all taped up neatly behind here, and that's actually what we used to secure the whole harness to the bottom of the seat so that it can't be moved or pulled or tugged or ripped. And now it's ready to install in the van. Well, one more note is that there's enough length of all of these cables so that when we move the seat all the way forward or all the way backwards, none of these cables are pulling. And then the center cushion of this Vario seat moves independently of the side bolsters, or the mounting position. And so for instance, the wire going to the seat belt receptacle has plenty of free play so that if the seat is in all the way in the extended position, it works well, and if it's all the way in the retracted position, it works well without pulling any wires or tearing anything. Ready to go. In preparation for installing the seat into the van, I like to slide the mounting risers all the way one way or the other so that the whole mounting holes are in the same position side to side. And it seems like if they're all the way back, I can start there in the back, and that's the easiest way to do it. Put together with the armrests on and the brackets installed and the wiring prepared, we can set the seat in the van on top of the pedestal or the swivel that you're using, and then line up the holes in the bottom of the adapter bracket with the holes in the top of the swivel, and bolt the seat in. There's two alternate bolt patterns for early Sprinters and the newer Sprinters, so just line up the bolts holes with the ones that you have.